there, and welcome to another Dave Does. Today we are doing what is I don't do very often, but I had a request from one of our Patreons whether I'd be interested in doing a album review, and although they take a little bit longer, I don't mind doing them like one a month, etc. So the album I was asked to review over was the album Spiritual Migration by the band Persefone. Now, I've done several other songs from that album in reactions, and I've talked about the complexity, the technical knowledge of the band, and just how a lot of the songs just come in full on with no real kind of gentle bringing you into the heavy like introductions. It's just drum fills or a guitar riff, and then it's just intensity straight off. And I've mentioned that a few times on some of the songs, so I thought it would be a good option for me to go down this route. So for those that haven't seen any of my reactions, please go over and check them out. There won't be any songs or music on this video. This video is for me to share my thoughts and feelings about the songs on the album and a summary of the album as a whole. I'm not a death metal fan, so I'm going to say that out loud. It's not something I listen to, but I can appreciate the technicality of what goes into writing that sort of music. I know a little bit about the band Persefone, so I kind of did a little bit of research, not a huge amount. He says, just as he finds his notes, I had notes. Where are my notes? But basically, yes, so Persefone are a technical death metal band. Been around since 2001 from Andorra. Spiritual Migration came out in 2013 as the fourth album they brought out. There wasn't much information about the meaning behind the album, although having done a bit of a search around for it, Spiritual Migration is all around about the mental psyche, is what I'm led to believe. So now, as due to the style of singing on the album, it's a lot harder to get into this sort of lyrical context. From that sort of principle of just kind of listening to it to take it all in, so I wasn't able to do it that way. The way I approach these reviews, just so you know how many times I listen to it, I listen to the album 3 or 4 times in general background in my normal environments of where I listen to music. So I'll have it on headphones while I'm working, while I'm driving, etc., and then I do a proper sit down start of the album to the end of the album, where all I do is listen to it with no other distractions around and make notes, etc. So that's kind of what I've done about it. So let's go through it. We're going to go through track by track. Hopefully that makes all sense. Share my thoughts and feelings. Let me know what you think about it in the end. A lot of the songs, I didn't want to rehash some of the same topics I talk about, so some of the context will just be kind of a generalization about the thoughts or how I was feeling, and I write down literally the words that came into my head as I was listening. So it's interesting to read back on it, just my kind of bullet point notes, if you like, my shorthand, and hopefully it makes sense as if you were listening to the songs as well. So the first song that comes onto the album is the Flying Sea Dragons, which I guess is their intro track to kind of just get you into the song, which is a shame because it felt like it could have been a whole song itself. I love the throbbing intro, swelling guitars, synth as well, going into thundering drums, driving, galloping along, early signs of a kind of prog rock influence there, whilst continuing to maintain their heavy edge. So I always kind of said with Persefone that I do find they've got a kind of they've definitely got some prog rock influences in their styling, but I really liked it. As I said, I just would have been cool for it to be a bit longer and make it flesh out into a song rather than just kind of an intro, if you like, to the album. We then go into Mind as Universe. My comments here are: any gentle mood mindset is quickly blasted away as the riffs and the drums change tempos as quickly as you work out what the last one was. And that really is what kind of sums up Persefone for me. Technical death metal where you just find you kind of get a couple of bars of a certain tempo, you go, right, I got it, and then they just switch it on you again. And they do it so seamlessly, so effortlessly, and it's technically really, really, well, I think they class it as technical death metal because it's so complex. But you always feel like I felt like I was chasing my tail when I was listening to the song. I wrote, you need a spreadsheet to work out each change. You literally could, just trying to work out what's going on. Then you get the kind of guttural vocals coming in, tearing your face off, power melodic chorus over various complex tempos and riffs. There's definitely some classical influences. I think this was the first part of the album on this song here, so the first proper song in, you already start to hear the classical influences of I don't know, I'm just going to throw names out like Mozart, Beethoven, etc. But what I'm saying is classical composers, those sort of arrangements. Amazing. I really liked the dueling guitar and keyboard solo matching. So I love how they kind of offset each other. And I just wrote the word masterclass. I think that is a great song. Mind as a Universe is a great proper song opening to the album. Really kind of sets the stall high. And could have easily been without the first flying sea dragons, could have easily just been straight in with that out song and it would have been fine. But really cool, really liked that. Then we get to the Great Reality. Straight away the song has got instant impact. Whatever the point of the song is, they're driving it home very quickly. This is just very forceful. Nice variable time signatures as expected, as you would with them. Ripping vocals into a melodic section. Could this be a trend emerging, I wrote? So that kind of heavy growl going into that melodic chorus. A lot of bands do that. I guess the more you listen to the track, the more accessible it becomes. And that's one thing I do find with Persefone is they are not an instantly accessible band. You can appreciate them for their technicality, but as far as just kind of clicking along and just getting into a groove with them, they're not the most easy just to kind of vibe off and groove on. You need to put the work in, but I think it's well worth the time and the effort to do so. I liked how it became kind of more classic death metal through there as the track moved on, and then suddenly you get some kind of midsection prog rock at you going into the sort of second part of the track, and then back to death metal solo. And the kind of riff that was in there kind of it kind of felt a bit creepy, made me think of kind of Alice in Wonderland. I don't know why, but it made me feel like Alice in Wonderland for some reason. We then get to the first kind of chill song, and I liked how the album's been split up into really heavy tracks, and then you get kind of a respite just to kind of let yourself... You've just had that intensity, you need a breather, and that was nice to have. So we had Zazen Meditation. The words I wrote down here were peace, tranquility, vibe, like, share and repeat. It's a good song to have on a loop. I think it's a great accessible track. We then moved in after that song into the Majestic of Gaia, which is which is definitely a song I have done a reaction to. So gone straight away is the tranquil, enter the chaotic, so much going on, kind of getting a kind of kill switch engaged in Flames vibe early on into the track. It had a cool midsection with this kind of throbbing, pulsing sample, galloping beats, great punctuation throughout the track. Voiceover section was really nice. I really liked that. I kind of went into the voiceover section, kind of gave me more of a symphonic metal vibe, like the Nightwishes, that sort of bands. Lovely soloing as always. Massive amounts of instrumentation throughout there. It was like an instrumental workout song, and I wrote the word in big bold capitals, epic track. I mean, that is just one of the I don't know if I put it as my favourite. It's probably the most epic track on the album for me. Is the Majestic of Gaia. Then we get into the Consciousness Part 1. Delicate, thoughtful intro, layered and textured, jazzy at times, giving kind of a ginger vibe, I thought. Chilled whilst giving off an energy that seems to refresh you after listening, which I thought was odd. You listen to it, you actually finish the song and you actually feel, rather than somber, sad or disheartened, you feel refreshed, which I really liked about that, listening to that one. And then we go into Consciousness Part 2, which flowed seamlessly from Part 1. The track seems to pull on a Mediterranean Asian influences at the same time, whilst keeping the raw metal heritage intact. Track is instantly accessible, reminding me of the guitarist Steve Vai tracks from the 80s and 90s. And some of his pieces of work, I remember there was that Surfer, or not Silver, is it Silver Surfer? Or Surfing with Aliens, wasn't it? That was one of the albums. I do remember listening to it. I don't own any of them, but I do. It was reminiscent of Steve Vai tracks I'd heard. Amazing guitar work, production. Something I wrote here, something about the piano outro. I loved the piano outro. I thought that really worked really well. I think that says love. My writing's atrocious when I'm making bullet points, but I love the piano outro. I think for me, Consciousness Part 1 and Part 2 are my favourite parts of the album. Mainly probably because they're more accessible. You don't have to work quite as hard, and I'm all about the easy route, but that was one thing for me, was I liked the fact that I could access them a lot easier. We move on to inner fullness, speed, fast changing tempos, intensity, a diverse shift from the previous 10 minutes where you've just been listening to the consciousness part 1 and part 2. You get into a kind of a cool groove, and then just as that happens, they change it up again. At points, they have hints of early 90s Pantera, I kind of felt on their song. It's one of the probably more straightforward tracks, which means it's still complex for everyone else, but for them it's straightforward, if you know what I mean. There's lots of vocal variation and good storytelling for the vocals as well, I liked on this one. So whereas in a lot of the other tracks it's been very guitar riff driven, and drum pattern driven, and the vocals do little bits, but they are not the prominent part. I felt vocals were a lot more prominent on Inner Fullness, which was cool. Initially, when I first heard the beginning part of the song, I was like, it feels a bit samey, but then I kind of, once I got into that kind of Pantera-esque vibe to it, and I get into more of a settled groove, I thought it was very, very cool. So I liked that one. We then go to another chill track in the song called Meditation. I felt very zen, flowing, chill track. Still had lots of variety and interest, but without the complexity of the other tracks. Shows that even chilled tracks can show technical balance, slightly twisted and off key at points, which I liked intentionally. So there were bits that were like, oh, hang on, that sounded off. That bit sounded off, like a bend or something like that. And it wasn't like a clean bend. It was something a little creepy and a little bit eerie, and I liked that. I thought that was cool. Upward Explosion then comes in, back to intensity. So you've had that chilled vibe, back into intensity, never afraid to attack, full ahead, really in your face. Complex time signatures giving way to a more standard verse with a kind of chorus, pre-chorus, whatever you want to call it, resembling something that reminded me of Slipknot, and I think they would love to play it. It probably is very similar to a Slipknot riff. And then before the song really gets a chance to loop, it's fading off into a synth, building towards the next song. Next song being the title track of the album, Spiritual Migration. Massive epic synths, almost Dream Theater-esque, building, adding texture, back and forth. Then it's kind of, you've got a jazzy, heavy verse, clean and then heavy vocals back and forth. The track has multiple tempo changes, complex layered arrangements, like early Genesis but done in a heavy death metal style. Mid-sections gives a mellow breather to find balance, build it into an instrumental masterclass with a jazz vibe, but still very metal. Technically a great track, in my opinion, but not the most accessible. It's probably, I would say Spiritual Migration is the least accessible one from first-time listeners, but it's the one that if you put the work in, you'll probably get the most reward from. I hope that makes sense. We then have Returning to the Source, and its intense drum intro, just full on keyboards, what more is needed, galloping, intense, accessible. Felt like my ears were bleeding at one point, but in a good way. Great keyboard and guitar solo, back and forth, and nice storytelling, running into an outro which sounded like running water stream. Calm after the storm, a lovely piano piece, makes you feel sad that it's over, but grateful that you were there in the first place. I hope that makes sense there. So it had a somber, sad feeling to the piano. Like you just go, oh, I can't believe it's all over now. I'm sad. But you also feel positive in the sense that, but I'm really glad that I listened to that. And I hope that makes sense. And that kind of sums up really for me what Persefone and Spiritual Migration was about. It's an album that is not a throwaway album. You get a lot of albums where they have some great hit singles, commercial chart songs, whatever you want to call them, chart hits, and they kind of knock them out the park. You like them, you sing along with them. The rest of the album you don't really care about, and that album gets moved on to. I feel with Spiritual Migration, although they don't have that element to that album, there is, once you spend the time to put the effort into the album, it is truly worth it by breaking it down, listening to the technicality, and get in the flow. Because I found that after listening to certain songs a couple of times, I was able to go with the tempo changes. But on that first listen, it's just too much. I remember the very first time I listened to the album properly was in my van driving to jobs. and I put it on, and I found it really difficult because driving is very rhythmical. And all these changes, I was finding it distracting. I was finding it difficult, and I remember switching on to something else, feeling that I had to go back to that at some other time because it was first thing in the morning. I hadn't woken up properly on the coffee. I was going, right, I'm going to listen to this and just see how it makes me feel. And initially, on first listening, when you're not knowing what to expect about the album, it makes you feel almost overwhelmed. There's so much going on, your senses can't take it in, but you need that time to go back and allow yourself to be overwhelmed, I guess, and then break it down so that you can feel comfortable with the song. And once you get to that stage and you can start to feel comfortable with the album, you get to enjoy it. But I think that initial piece is when you do feel overwhelmed, you don't naturally enjoy it. And I love the fact that that's where, with those songs, they've put those nice mellow chill pieces to enable you to, where you've been feeling overwhelmed by listening, you go to those chill pieces, and that almost helps you reset and get yourself ready for the next piece. So I think that's very cool. Now, I hope you liked my overall feedback about the album as a whole. Now, if you did, please like, share, leave your comments down below. If you've got a suggestion of an album to review, let me know in the comments down below, and maybe that will be one of the ones in the future. And remember, that, of course, is how Dave does it.